Hey, Prism Mates. So good to see you. We have President Barack Obama not on the show, but in the chat, so to speak. Thank God he is now using the power he still retains in order to support what is now an essential effort to save our democracy. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here, guys. I am essentially trying to, give you an honest assessment always of where we are. And so I'm thrilled about this. So let's begin with this. And don't worry, I have got so much fun stuff today for Thursday. We need it. Okay, so let's just start with Obama. Baby, Obama is back. So here's the deal. Let's just start first with the tweet, and then we will go to the analysis. Here's what Barack Obama had to say over on the hellscape that is Twitter. They call it X. I call it a fucked up Nazi cesspool, but good for President Obama and others who are still willing to spread positive vibes there. It's too much for me. Okay, here we go. Over the long term, we shouldn't have political gerrymandering in America, just a fair fight between Republicans and Democrats based on who's got better ideas. But since Texas is taking direction from a partisan White House and gerrymandering in the middle of a decade to try and maintain the House despite their unpopular policies, I have tremendous respect for how Governor Gavin Newsom has approached this. He's put forward a smart, measured approach in California designed to address a very particular problem at a very particular moment in time. Great. Mic drop. Now, I know this is going to flip out Donald Trump. Now, we don't even know what Donald Trump's reaction is to this because, as you may have heard, Trump was MIA yesterday. I think I was watching Lawrence last night and realized that his schedule apparently yesterday was very light. And his only public appearance, even for the press, I guess, was some swearing in the White House. And I don't have that image for you, but Donald Trump wasn't the person administering the oath or even there's someone holding a Bible. There's usually the person being sworn in. And then there would be, you would think, the president. The person in this case being sworn in was, I think, the new ambassador to the UN. This is the ambassador position to the UN that you may remember Elise Stefanik wanted so much. Donald Trump said it was going to be hers. And then he took it away. She wanted it so bad, in part because I think she was measuring the drapes in the giant multi-million-dollar New York apartment right near the UN that would have been her free home. At any rate, that's not the point of this. The point of this is who was swearing in the new UN ambassador? Well, it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Not unusual, of course, but why would he be doing it in the White House? And there's this photo of Rubio, if you're looking at it. He's on the right. This future ambassador is on the left. And then there's a woman sort of in the middle there holding the Bible, So we've got the ambassador with his, I guess it was his right hand on the Bible, his left hand in the air, taking the oath of office. What's really weird is these three figures are in really sharp focus, and they're pushed up against the Resolute desk. And then you see everything kind of behind them, a little blurry, including Donald Trump's face, just staring at them. So there is a question in everyone's mind whether either they were really in the Oval doing this and he was photoshopped in, or perhaps they were elsewhere and they were photoshopped in. I don't want to create some kind of mythology around this, add to the rumor mill, but I only repeat this because Lawrence said it and I trust his judgment. Now, I want to now talk a little bit more about what is going on in Texas and California. I'm sure you heard the bad news yesterday that ultimately the Texas House did pass that mid-decade gerrymandering. Now, usually the congressional districts are drawn after the results of the official census come out. I mean, there's no law against, it's just a tradition that states are doing this right when they get those numbers. But in this instance, by being the first state to sort of step into to suit up for battle and to deliberately gerrymander the districts in Texas to strip count them, five congressional seats from Democrats. That is terrible, right? They have now accomplished that. I think whatever they've done now has to also pass in the Texas Senate. I thought they had already passed it, but maybe it changed, and then the governor will sign it. So this is basically a done deal. And I heard Claire McCaskill last night on MSNBC also talk about that some of these districts are 500, I think she said 500 miles. It was either 5 or 800, but let's just say it was 500 miles across because it was a minimum of that. And she's like, if I'm home in the home district, not in Washington, how am I going to cover that territory and visit with all of my constituents? It's ridiculous. It's not about representation. It's about stripping people of representatives who express their views. And it's like I said, they've thrown down the gauntlet and they've suited up for battle. So let's see a couple things. I want you to see right here what Donald Trump had to say about that. Here we go. Over on True Social, Trump said, big win for the great state of Texas. Everything passed on our way to 5 more congressional seats and saving your rights, your freedoms, and your country itself. Texas never lets us down. Florida, Indiana, and others are looking to do the same thing. More seats equals less crime, a great economy, and a strong Second Amendment. It means happiness and peace. But Republicans, there is one thing even better. Stop mail-in voting, a total fraud that has no bounds. Also, go to paper ballots before it's too late. Anyway, that is where Trump is with this. And of course, this is nonsense, right? And I think I really respect Barack Obama. We were at Harvard at the same time. I get it. I get it that he wants to say that the way politics works is a person with the better ideas can win. That's obviously, not true. It's the people who can communicate, not only that their ideas are better, but who can knock down the propaganda and manipulation techniques, the advertising techniques, the hypocrisy, and the lies of people like Donald Trump and his now Republican Party. You don't ever win against someone committing fraud if you cannot prosecute the fraud in courts and also be able to have the spotlight and have the press making clear who is committing fraud, who is lying, making promises they know they can't fulfill, and who has a track record of telling the truth. Again, so, this is where he and I differ, and many people do. I'm glad he has stepped into the fight with his support. Now, someone mentioned to me, speaking of Barack Obama, that when will he step up and support Zohran Mamdani? Deb mentioned that, and she's right. He should vocally do that. Deb and I were communicating about this last night, and yes, we agree that Deb is one of our, of course, mod squad, right? Hey, Jason. Hey, Deb. Hey, AJ. But Deb and I both agree that it's fantastic that Barack Obama made a phone call to Zohran Mamdani when he won his, the kind of landslide primary, and kind of sent it, at least initially, Andrew Cuomo packing. So what we need now, though, is more than private words of encouragement that the campaign can put out there. But I think Obama needs to finally express a view, which is right now, and always, the Democratic tent needs to be a big tent. It's not enough for the Democratic Party to say, we'll accept some center-right people. Now is the time to say that the heartbeat of the Democratic Party, the base, is actually beyond center-left, but left, right? Be broad. Except we have had people like Mondami. He is a socialist. There have been socialist mayors of New York. Tell the truth, because the problem we have in America is that the propaganda isn't just coming from Donald Trump, who just lies and lies and lies, and people who cover for him. But the propaganda is also coming from right inside the House. The corporate Democrats, and I, by the way, like free enterprise. I like corporations. I just think they need to be reined in and follow the law like anyone else. And I recognize that absolute power corrupts absolutely. I like small businesses. I like medium businesses. I like big businesses. We need them all. But businesses are run by people, and people inside of organizations that have a lot of power can be super corrupt. So bottom line is, we need to dismantle also the lies told by the crypto industry, the lies told by also our members of the Democratic Party. And I'm looking at you, Hakeem Jeffries, who is literally voicing and supporting the propaganda against Zohran Mamdani, repeating a lie, saying he has a rent control apartment. He does not. He has rent stabilized. Also, the propaganda that, well, if he has an income, then he shouldn't have a rent stabilized apartment. He somehow cheated. Okay, this is so disingenuous. Either Jeffries is stupid, which he is not. He's a brilliant man, or he is deliberately misleading us. And so to suggest that it's cheating if you have a stable income and you get a rent stabilized apartment is actually a lie. The rules are you don't get a rent stabilized apartment unless you can prove a certain level of income. And by no means was Mamdani and his wife's income super high. Even for outside of New York standards, it was right where it needed to be for rent stabilization. So I really am suspicious. I think there's a problem. I was a big Hakeem Jeffries fan, but he should not be our Speaker of the House. If he doesn't deserve the position, if he cannot embrace and endorse Zohran Mamdani, who turned out more people for that election than have ever been turned out. He got young people. I mean, for that kind of off-cycle election, which these mayoral primaries are, Jeffries himself maybe feels threatened, but I'm telling you now, it's not enough to point out that Donald Trump is a crook and a liar. We have to stop lying within the Democratic Party. People notice it. Okay, now let us get back to what is going on in the gerrymandering. I want to share with you Gavin Newsom speaking with members of the Siren podcast. These are amazing social media folks. I have actually met all of them, I think a year ago at the Democratic National Convention. The Siren podcast, I think, is mainly hosted by Jo from Jers. She is fabulous. Olivia Juliana is on there. You might remember her from last year. She works at Planned Parenthood, and she was being mocked. I don't know if it was by Donald Trump or another Republican, being very fat phobic against her, and she just fought back and raised a ton of money. We have Harry Sisson, and then Aaron Parnas, Lev's son, who is podcaster and commentator extraordinaire himself. Let's play that.
And we are incredibly honored to be joined on the Siren podcast by the governor of California, Governor Gavin Newsom. Welcome to the Siren podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I mean, you're making some news. You're a very busy man. So let's just jump right on in. Can you please explain to our audience, what you're doing in the state of California regarding the potential redistricting of your congressional maps and why this may be something you have to do?
Well, we're fighting fire with fire. We don't want to do this, but to your point, your question rather, we have to do it at peril, being judged not only not to have lived, but to be judged watching democracy slip from right out underneath us. The reality is it's not just Texas that Donald Trump believes he's entitled to 5 congressional seats. He has sent his vice president to Indiana. He's making the case not just to what's going on up in Ohio, but Florida, Missouri, and other states. I imagine it's just the beginning, what, as we speak, is occurring in real time in Texas. And so my mindset, our mindset here in California, is one of accountability, responsibility. We have agency. We're not bystanders. We can shape the future. And by taking some responsibility and moving assertively, as we have with the California legislature that just yesterday introduced a special election, a constitutional amendment that will, in essence, nullify the 5 votes that they claim to be picking up in Texas by asking the voters in a transparent and temporary way to make a determination for themselves to change our maps mid-decade in response to what occurred in Texas on November 4th.
Great. And I see people in the chat saying, Jen, get Newsom on. Yes, I'm working on it. I have been friendly with someone on his communication staff from before he had that position. And actually, when I met Gavin Newsom at the debate, that terrible debate from last, and it was the end of June or July of 2024 in Atlanta. He's a lovely guy. Great. It's just he's obviously on high demand. And what's key is that he is appearing on these shows, not just on, MSNBC, which is changing its name, not just on the networks. He is going to the podcasts, which is great. And so I do want to continue on a little bit of the Gavin Newsom theme. And I guess what I want to point out now is that Newsom is expanded his trolling game. And what's really good about this is he is now not just targeting Donald Trump, but all of the people who are trying to spin out their bullshit propaganda. And so I want to share some of that with you, how that is actually happening. So let me share with you. Here we go. What we were just talking about is the Election Response Rigging Act, the Election Rigging Response Act. And remember that last week, the Covfefe comment, and this is all from last week, where he was posing as if he was being worshipped by Hulk Hogan up at the top as an angel, Kid Rock, and oh my God. Tucker Carlson. And then you get, people saying it's disrespectful. And he said, oh, my bad. I meant to post this thing of Donald Trump pretending he was the Pope. Okay. So here's the deal. Here's the latest thing Newsom has done. He is now dealing with Fox News because Fox News, as you may remember, is acting like Newsom is being immature. Let me just remove this for a second. Acting like he's being immature, saying Tomi Lahren was on also recently on top of Dana Perino, who used to work as a spokesperson in the Republican White House. They're saying, oh, this isn't funny. And then you had J.D. Vance kind of getting it, that you couldn't pretend that this was not something Trump did himself. So J.D. Vance is like, oh, Newsom's just copying Trump. And what he doesn't realize is you just can't copy his style. You have to be original. And Newsom just took him to the woodshed. But this is what I love that he said about Fox News. Let me read it to you. Wow. Fox News can't stop talking about me. Gavin C. Newsom, America's favorite governor. Tonight, he means yesterday. Tonight, their entire primetime lineup was about me. Jesse Waters kept calling me daddy. Very weird. Not interested, but thank you. Sean Hannity, very nice guy, nearly cried because I won't take his advice. Sorry, Sean. Then they dragged out the B team of dum-dums. Meatball Ron, Tomi, Toilet Lahren, and Teddy Cancun Cruz. He even flew back special from Mexico. All whining about me, GCN. They had to play the music to shut Ted up about my beautiful hair. I get it. So jealous. Total disaster. MAGA hates me because they hate you. They hate that California is the fourth biggest economy in the world. They hate that crime is down, that we're number one in farming. I love the farmers, manufacturing, tourism, and tech, all while we give affordable health care, free school, meals, make America pregnant again, paid baby leave for moms. They should not return anyways. $20 minimum wage, and so much more for the people. They hate that Democrats are winning. Fox and MAGA have Newsom derangement syndrome. They should cry harder. Sad. GCN. Kind of brilliant, right? So I think you would love to hear Jesse Waters calling him daddy, but I got that for you for Crazy Town. You're going to have to wait. Okay, so let's see what else Newsom is doing. He's expanding this to make this work. So you probably can't see this, so I'm just going to have to tell you a little more, but this is a screenshot below. And it says breaking. This is from yesterday. California Supreme Court denies Republicans' request to intervene on the Democratic redistricting legislation. This is huge, right? We had Republican members of the California legislature suing to try to stop this effort that Newsom is making. He's putting it to the people in an election, a special election in November, a referendum on this redistricting plan that will give at least 5 additional seats to Democrats, right, to counterbalance Texas. So what does Newsom's press office say? What do you call a quote unquote lawsuit that gets tossed in less than 48 hours? Best responses will be RT'd. Okay, best responses will be retweeted. Again, he is winning the social media game. And I've got a little bit more. I think you're going to love this. Here is this screenshot. And they show, this is in Fox News when Jesse is trying to tear apart Gavin Newsom. And he says, uncross your legs, Gavin. Now, I guess, for He-Man alpha males, I think they have to have their legs spread, right? The man spread. I guess it's too feminine to cross your legs. I don't know. Hey, fellas, is it gay to cross your legs, as the meme says? And by the way, I'm not being homophobic here. I'm just mocking people who say that. So what does Governor Newsom's press office say in response to Jesse saying, uncross your legs, Gavin? Jesse, he's just not interested. I mean, brilliant, right? Okay. And who else? Who else is Newsom turning it on? Let's look at this. So actually, let me just do this. So Rick Grenell, who at one point was given an office in the, I don't know if he has an office in the Kennedy Center, what this is about, but let me just say, I guess Rick Grenell was, thank you, Electron Creations. So Rick Grenell, who is, as I recall, Islamophobic man, and I don't know what his new job is. I'm looking it up. Well, he was at one time acting director of national intelligence, so that DNI role. Now he's special envoy for special missions of the United States. Not sure what that means. Kind of a terrible guy. And so I guess he said something like, well, he's a terrible guy. Let me just be clear. As I recall, he had said something specifically Islamophobic, and I want to back this up so you guys don't think I'm making stuff up. Here we go. Here we go. So from 2024, I'm sharing this with you. I'm going to share this screen with you just so you know. I don't make these offhand ad hominem attacks. This is from 2024. Former Trump official meets with Arab and Muslim American leaders in America. And this is, he went there to try to promise them that Donald Trump would be so much better in terms of Gaza. I don't have the full story. We have here, we won't be taken as fools here in Michigan. And, this is what he was trying to do. Now, I'm sorry, I don't have his actual history right here, but I want you to, oh shoot, stop sharing. I want you to trust me on that one. Now, let's go back to this. So they said the Kennedy Center's janitor caught us. So he was mocking Rick Grenell for not having a high-level position, I guess. And Richard Grenell said, "Stop making fun of working class people. Elitism is so ugly." And he fell right into the trap. And Newsom says, elitism is so ugly, and has this picture with Donald Trump in his gold. It almost looks like the White House now, but in his disgusting Versailles apartment. Okay. What else does Newsom do? He is now sharing some of the AI images here. So someone says California pays a lot of poor red state bills, right? California is a net provider to the federal budget. And here is what they wrote. California, fourth largest economy of the world. And Trump in the Trumpian way, Newsom says, all caps, wow, an honor. Thank you. Congratulations, Californians. So he has expanded his game. What has just happened? For some reason, the head of digital media for Donald Trump has now resigned. That did not go unnoticed by Newsom. Okay, so let's talk about some hard-hitting news. What the hell is happening right now with the Epstein files, right? Well, what is happening to protect the victims? I've got something to share with you. The third judge, this is the last judge asked, because there are 3 different grand jury cases. The federal judge in New York, who was in charge of Jeff Epstein's federal case, that was where he was indicted in 2019 by a grand jury, and then a month later died in prison. That judge is refusing to release the grand jury transcripts. So we already had the judge in Florida from the state law case refusing to release those grand jury transcripts. We had the judge in New York, the federal judge, refusing to release Ghislaine Maxwell's transcripts. And now we have the same thing happening with the federal judge in New York from the Epstein case. And why? Because it's a diversion. I want to share with you a video about that to explain it to you instead of just showing you the decision, which is really lengthy. Okay, here we go. I think you're ready. Let's do it.
President Trump over the Epstein investigation. After weeks of unrelenting pressure from the MAGA base, the Trump administration told supporters it was taking action, playing up its decision to push for the release of Epstein grand jury transcripts. Well, tonight, Judge Richard Berman is ripping off the fig leaf, denying the Trump administration of its attempt to appear transparent. The judge saying there was nothing really in those transcripts. The ruling reads this, in part. The instant grand jury motion appears to be a diversion from the breadth and scope of the Epstein files in the government's possession. The grand jury testimony is merely a hearsay snippet of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged conduct. He calls it a snippet. And that snippet, we now know from this opinion, is just 70 pages out of what he says, in his opinion, is the 100,000 pages that are right now in the Justice Department's hands. That is 0.07% of the information that is available. And that includes the testimony, when you're talking about the grand jury transcripts, of just one witness, an FBI agent who the judge has said had no direct knowledge of the facts in the case. Berman went on to note that it is the Justice Department that could release the vast majority of the Epstein files without needing permission. Files that we know mention Donald Trump's name multiple times. He has not been accused of any wrongdoing regarding Jeffrey Epstein, but it does make you wonder, why are they still then holding out? For weeks, you've been told that the president and his administration wants transparency, full stop.
President Trump has demanded full transparency from this.
The Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency.
Truth and transparency, except that is not what they're offering. Instead, Trump has been dangling grand jury transcripts really as the end-all be-all. Just listen to the way he first called for the release of the files. It was July 17th, weeks after his base started pounding the table, wanting more, refusing to let the Epstein investigation go. And Trump writes this: based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetrated by Democrats should end right now. 2 minutes later, Attorney General Pam Bondi, the loyal soldier, responded online saying this: President Trump, we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Trump's decision to drag this out, it is not going over well with some of the very people who helped Donald Trump get elected, like podcaster Joe Rogan.
I heard as a Democratic hoax.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
But
Well, it's certainly not a hoax if you go to jail. Certainly not a hoax if Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail too. So like she's in jail for sex trafficking.
Kristen Holmes out front live at the White House for us tonight. Kristen, today gave us yet another sign that this story is not going away as long as the administration refuses to release the Epstein files that they can.
Yeah, Kate, and they are really hoping that this story will die down. Now, they have been pleased relatively for the last couple of weeks because it hasn't been the dominating headline. We know that they had a very hard time actually getting a grip on this story, particularly because so many of the people calling for the release were his own supporters. So they spent most of their time on the defensive. When you talk about it not going away, this is just one aspect that's not going away. We know that on Friday, there's likely to be a tranche of documents related to the Epstein case that is given over to Congress, the House Oversight Committee. And that's just the beginning of those documents from the Department of Justice. Now, how those will be handled by the Republican-led committee, that's obviously a big question. But I can tell you there is nothing that James Comer does that he doesn't brief the White House on and have conversations with the White House about before he does anything. That is something that we know. We know they're in constant communication. He is, of course, the leader of the House Oversight Committee. So we'll see how this goes in terms of transparency. But one thing to note, they were calling for transparency. They were at one point talking about potentially releasing the transcripts from Todd Blanche's interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. It has now been weeks. They have not released that. Now, I was told in part that was because they were waiting for this story to die down. But again, now we're seeing more documents potentially coming to light on Friday. We're hearing from this judge. This is a story they want to go away, but it's just not going to go away because there are so many people, including, again, President Trump's own supporters, who want more information, who want more transparency, who want to read some of these documents around the case, Kate.
And it is their words that are coming back to haunt them for months and months now of what they said they wanted to see done. And now it is in their power to do, and they are not. Kristen, thank you. Out front with us now is Democratic Congresswoman Summer Lee. She is on the House Oversight Committee Kristen was just talking about and was a driving force behind subpoenaing the Epstein files from the Justice Department. Congresswoman, thank you for coming in. So what do you first make of this judge's ruling rejecting the Trump administration's bid to release these grand jury documents and the way he talked about it?
Yeah, we're not surprised by that, right? At the end of the day, we have a way of getting all of the information, all of the details that the American public wants, that truly bipartisan. There are Dems and Republicans who want it, and that, justice demands, and that's through the DOJ file. That's the DOJ. We subpoenaed them. They are able to release and should and have been commanded to release all the files, complete, full, unredacted, and that includes the underlying evidence of this case. So that would be included in our subpoena. So this actually doesn't impact the subpoena. The subpoena is where we're going to get all of our answers.
Yesterday was the deadline for the Justice Department to comply with the subpoena. That has come and gone, which, without any files, please tell me if you've received them quite yet. What, if anything, have you actually heard from DOJ is actually going to happen?
Good question.
Yeah, so, we heard the same thing that you did. Comer, of course, issued the subpoena. And in it, there was this 2-week deadline, right? The DOJ comes back this week and they say that they're going to start to slow trickle in some of the information, some of the files starting on Friday. Now, what we know is, of course, that's obstruction, right? This is a further obstruction of justice, right? The subpoena gave a deadline. It gave a strong deadline, and it was called for, again, full, complete, unredacted file. So their unwillingness to release that all at once, it continues to just raise more questions. What are they trying to hide, right? What is the big cover up, and why are they not able to do this, right? Pam Bondi herself said she had the files weeks and weeks ago. So we know that they exist. We know that they're complete.
That's
And we know that
right.
they could just hand them over. But they keep drawing this out, which, mind you, is causing further damage to the hundreds of victims
Yes.
who are having to relive this, who are seeing this play out in the news, who's watching their president, the FBI, the intelligence community, all seem to be a part of a massive cover-up at the level of, quite frankly, Watergate.
But do you have any idea who is deciding what your committee does and doesn't get? Who is deciding what
Such
is
a good
redacted, how
question
it is
from
redacted,
Kate.
and what documents are going to be coming over in this first, one of my least favorite words in the world, in this first tranche? Like, that seems critical in terms of what you're going to get. And is the public going to see it right away?
Yeah, I mean, we recognize that this is a Trump-led DOJ. We knew that going into this, right? We recognize how influential he is over all of, over his federal government, over his executive branch right now. So we always knew that there was a strong possibility that the DOJ, that Trump, that all of the people around him would try to, obstruct, try to, basically push this off or demur, all that. We expected that. Who's going to, and who's in control of it, we don't know. But what we can say is that the subpoena was very specific in its language. That subpoena asked for unredacted files. It was voted on properly in the federal law enforcement subcommittee with bipartisan support. So the only names that should be redacted in these files that they are to give over to the oversight committee are the names of victims. Anything more than that,
That's right.
they are going against the subpoena. It is a legal order, and they're breaking it.
Congresswoman, Friday's going to come. Please come back on when we need to know what the next move.
Okay. I don't usually show that long of a clip, but I thought it was important. Summer Lee is fabulous. I think Kate Boudin asked all of the good questions, and you have an idea of what's happening, what should be happening, what really is happening. Which brings us to the question. I think we all know that they're going to keep obstructing and delaying and maybe even redacting and withholding or whatever they want to do, because Donald Trump doesn't want his name or the names of any of the people that he is friends with or who might have a potential to pay him money to keep their name out or what have you. Who knows what his motivation is? He does not want to release those names of people who might be Epstein clients who were at the very least associates and named in these files or accused in these files. And so that brings me to the question of, isn't there anyone inside the FBI or DOJ who wants to leak this? And so the person who comes to mind is Dan Bongino. And where is he? Have you noticed we have not seen from Bongino in a while? And so here's the deal. What is going on with Bongino? Well, The Independent yesterday and other news organizations have reported that the FBI has now appointed Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey as a so-called co-deputy director. Co-deputy director. So let me continue the appointment, and that he will share his duties with Bongino. The appointment was made by Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel. This comes after Bongino, 50, a former Secret Service agent and podcaster, reportedly clashed with Bondi over the administration's failure to release the Epstein files last month. Oh, so keep in mind, Deputy Director of the FBI. That is what Bongino is. And now they, instead of firing him, they're just giving someone the same job as he has. People are calling that person the babysitter. At what point does Bongino break down? At what point does he lose it and let stuff fly? At this point, with a babysitter nearby, he's not taking any files home, right? So we'll see if he planned ahead, if he is going to speak to the press, because it's now or never, baby. I know he doesn't listen to my podcast, but Bongino should do a solid right now. They're totally fucking him over and making him look weak. He shouldn't put up with this. Now, what else is going on? I didn't want to skip this the other day, but Donald Trump is now outright diminishing the horror of chattel slavery in the United States, diminishing it. And this is what he said the other day in the context of his effort to whitewash, figuratively, the museums, and specifically all the Smithsonian museums, to so-called de-woke, to whitewash them, especially the Museum of African American History. So let me read what he said the other day. This is on not all caps, just some caps on Blue Sky. This is Donald Trump. The museums, let me speak like him so you know it's not me. I'm not like him. Let me speak in a stupid voice if I can try that. The museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen. And I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities, where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including our museums. Well, that was an interesting voice. Okay, how bad slavery was. Yeah, guys, slavery was worse than anything that has been written about it. I don't even want to describe that. And it's not just like slavery was this one-off glitch. 400 years of American history. 400 years. In the entire physical foundation of the Capitol and the entire Southern economy, the backbone of the United States when it was founded, was built on slavery, on the forced imprisonment, rape, and brutality against Black people in America. That is a fact. And the idea that we would not want to see that now and understand it so that we can root out any vestiges of that and continue to move forward and learn the lesson is outrageous. And so what's happening is, once again, there are people doing cleanup for Donald Trump. And when they try to clean up, they sometimes make it worse. Let me play this for you and we'll talk on the other side of this clip.
So like just about every other country in the world, the United States has got a checkered past. I mean, what should we do in terms of our museum? Should we ignore that? Should that be massaged in a certain way to?
Okay. Checkered past. It's not a checkered past. It was a solid, major financial, political, and economic system of degradation for which we have not made up for 400 years, but you call it checkered. Okay, you do you. Let's go.
To make it less significant? I mean, some of the worst episodes in our history were formative experiences that led us to where we are today, and those typically are reflected in museums.
Yep, I think the fact that we had our country.
Okay, so she's asked this question by the Fox News host. I would have done a more intense inquiry, but he lays it out. And what does Lindsay Halligan, special assistant to the president, say? Who is hired because she's, a certain kind of beautiful, if that's your gig. She looks good to Donald Trump on camera. But listen to the words coming out of her mouth. Let's play that.
Yep, I think the fact that we had our country was involved in slavery is awful. No one thinks otherwise.
I gotta stop. Was involved in slavery. Foundation of our economic and political system, baked right into the Constitution. Not involved in, built on. Sorry, it just makes me angry.
But what I saw when I was going through the museums personally was an overemphasis on slavery. And I think there should be more of an overemphasis on how far we've come since slavery. Our country...
I think there should be an overemphasis on how far we've come from slavery. So this is an historical museum. Bitch. Sorry, I can't help it. If you want a separate museum on American progress, go do you. 400 years, the foundation. And even after the end of slavery, Reconstruction was cut short by the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And then we had Jim Crow. And and now we're rolling back the rights of people to vote. I mean, it's the idea, the audacity that this should be not a historical museum, but there was this thing that happened. Oops. I mean, that's not what this museum is about. Okay.
Is a country of progress, and it's the greatest country in the world. And we should be able to take our kids, our students through the Smithsonian and feel proud when we leave. There's a lot of history to our country, both positive and negative, but we need to keep moving forward. We can't just keep focusing on...
No. The purpose of a museum isn't to feel proud. These are the people I thought that we shouldn't coddle our kids, that everyone shouldn't get a trophy. You need to see stuff for what it is. Feeling proud is not how you should feel after you walk out of the film Schindler's List. Feeling good isn't how you should feel after leaving the Holocaust Museum with piles of shoes of people who were killed in the Holocaust. And why are they attacking the Museum of African American History and saying we shouldn't emphasize slavery? Why aren't they going after the Holocaust Museum? And I can say this as a Jewish person, right? Because the perception is that Jewish people at this point, the perception is they're white and that Donald Trump wants to curry favor with them in terms of the Republican Party. And yet a lot of people on the right that support, I should say the far right and the Nazi parties, people who support Donald Trump, a lot of them are Holocaust deniers, but they're not attacking that museum. You shouldn't feel proud. And by the way, I actually think you can feel proud walking through that museum and seeing actually how far we've come by walking out the doors and going, look how far we've come. But don't erase history. Okay, I'm continuing.
The negative. All it does is divide us, and we really need to unite the country and focus on all the positive as we approach America's 250th birthday.
All right, well, we'll keep watching this. We'll see how the review goes.
Focus on the positive. Okay. History isn't about cheerleading. And you have to remember that line. History is told by the conquerors. They're trying to conquer. Up until now, history could be told by the historians, by the experts. I'm not loving it, what they're doing, and we won't allow it. Okay. Now, speaking of history, I got one last thing for you before we get to Crazy Town. So apparently, there are, the places where the troops are being put in DC include Union Station, which is not an unsafe place, but there are some homeless people there. So God forbid there are homeless people trying to survive when there's no safe place or shelter for them to go to. So that they don't like seeing that, Stephen Miller. And so Stephen Miller was at some sort of presser, and there was Pete Hegseth, saying that it's not safe and, women aren't safe. And here's my thing. I don't feel safe around Pete Hegseth, who thinks women shouldn't have the right to vote. I don't feel safe around any of these people who think that immigrants and anyone of color can be rounded up, questions asked later, roughed up, denied due process, sent out of the country into foreign prisons. I don't feel safe around them. I don't feel safe around Donald Trump. an adjudicated sexual assaulter. You could say rapist if you what the judge actually said that was. I don't feel safe around them. But okay, let's listen to this. So I want to add that Stephen Miller had this weird thing that he said, and it's not as weird as you think. There's actually data behind this. He's attacking hippies. So let's look at this, and I'm going to run down what the hell he is doing here and why it's significant. Watch this.
Families they're raising this city, they have no one that they're.
Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't control the sound on this clip. So I'm going to stop talking. You can turn it up. I won't interrupt this clip. And at the end, turn down your volume. So turn it up now.
They have no families they're raising this city. They have no one that they're sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the vice president are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address another thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department, the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
Okay, now turn down your volume. Ooh. Knowing the demographic audience of my show, I'm sure you have a lot to say about Stephen Miller claiming that anyone in a protest who he doesn't like is a white hippie who is 90 years old. And he speaks about them with disdain. Now, he's got the age thing wrong, but let's talk about why that might be that Stephen Miller has a problem with hippies. Let's start with the personal and let's get to the political. Here's Stephen Miller when he was in high school, when he had enough, I don't know what it was, to grow his beard and his hair. I am not trying to, I know a lot of people have alopecia. I don't know what condition he has, that he doesn't have hair on his head. It could just be male pattern baldness. Not an insult, but I'm just pointing out to you what hippies are known mostly for is hair, free love, and drugs. Okay, so he doesn't have hair. Look at him now. Let's just compare high school and now. I think Stephen Miller's like, what is he? In his, tell me in the chat, he's not super old. He's 39 years old, right? So this is Stephen Miller when he was 17, maybe. He's in high school, California, and here he is now. Okay, let's talk about those hippies. Those hippies, this is a photo of two people at Woodstock in the late 60s, as you know. And there was it was like summer of 69, right? And in 2019, tell me if I'm getting it wrong, 2019, they had the 50th anniversary. And this cute little couple who actually met at Woodstock, here they are today. Here they are today. Aren't they cute? They are not in their 90s. They're just not. If you were, let's say, 19 years old at Woodstock, right? You would have been born like in 1950. That makes you 75, not 90. Nothing wrong with being 90. Go for it. I mean, Donald Trump was talking about his parents were in their 90s. Okay, so this is that couple now. Let's talk more. Why, though, is he scared of the hippies? Well, this is a piece written, co-authored by Bill McKibben and Alyssa Windwood. And there's a big problem. This was written this spring. Let me blow this up so you guys can see it. So this is a headline, Why Older Americans Are Trump's Biggest Nightmare. And let me just tell you that I'm going to read you from, again, Windwood and McKibben, quoting, that there's a spasm of dislike for Trump's chaotic presidency is not news. New polls show Americans unhappier with this president at 100 days than any of his predecessors. Much of the attention has focused on his rapidly falling numbers with young voters. But we're seeing signs in the data and on the streets of something that may be an even bigger problem for the MAGA world. Older Americans are increasingly repelled by this guy. Numbers first. If you look at the internals of, say, the most recent Marist poll, guys, again, this was from May, he does worst among members of the older age cohort. Only 37% of the greatest silent generation, people in their 80s and 90s, approve of the president's performance. Baby boomers, those like us in our 60s and 70s, aren't far behind, with only 41% giving him the nod, compared to very nearly half of Gen X. Meanwhile, anyone who's taken part in protests against the administration around the nation can testify to the amount of gray hair in the crowd. We've marched in New York, New England, and California in recent weeks, and large swaths of the crowd definitely qualify for senior discounts at the movies. Mark Engler, co-author of This Is an Uprising, about the rise of modern protest movements, wrote to us last week. Here in Philly, the crowd made me feel like I was on the younger side, an increasingly rare experience now that I'm about to turn 50. All of this goes against the common wisdom. You're supposed to get more conservative as you age. And isn't Trump supposed to be taking people our age back to our happy youth by making America great again? But we aren't surprised. We spent the last 3 years organizing liberal and progressive Americans over the age of 60. They make it clear what's going on. So guys, yeah, that is what's going on. That's what's going on. And attacking people, the so-called hippies, he's trying to demonize a group of people, right? Saying, he's also essentially calling so-called white hippies, anyone white over the age of 60 at a protest, anyone white with gray hair, he's saying they're racist. So now they're woke. They're claiming that it's racist to not want the federal government putting a police force into Washington, D.C., saying that white people don't care about Black safety and crime in the cities. Well, here's the deal. Make D.C. a state and allow it to actually, instead of being a city, allow it to have the same kind of autonomy and infrastructure, etc. At any rate, I just think it's outrageous, but it's Stephen Miller. So that brings us to Crazy Town. Oh, before Crazy Town, guess who is coming on the show tomorrow as our guest? LB. That was her old pseudonym, Lincoln's Bible, LB. Her real name is Stephanie Koff. You might know her from her podcast. I think it was called The World Beneath. And she's also a co-host of The 5-8 with Greg Ollier, a show I love to go on. She will be here tomorrow morning. I'm going to have Greg also, I think, sometime next week. And there is no one better on this planet than either of them to follow the money when it comes to Trump Russia and when it comes to Epstein. Cannot wait. Okay, guys, here we go. I promised you, Jesse Waters. Here he is.
Daddy, 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 daddy.
One more time.
Daddy, 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 daddy.
Love you guys.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, how come everyone? Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, how come everyone? Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.